But that was one of the big kind of challenges, was doing stuff that we thought was cool, but you need to have the right places who are ready to receive you because they see you a certain way. You know what I mean? So if people don't look at you as a certain brand that fits what they're trying to do, they're like, well, we don't know. It's like me saying, yeah, Dunlop's back. You know what I mean? Like phenomenal heritage brand, but you couldn't just bring out a new collection and then have everyone love it. It's like you got to kind of do a lot of the groundwork first to get people primed for it to go, oh, we're waiting for that. You know, so yeah, those are some of the lessons I learned.
And sorry, Richard, I cut you off. You were going to speak about your time at Puma, but then I kind of held you on. Yeah.
No, I just think that was one of the places when I was initially there where the brand was going through a resurgence, where, you know, the brand wasn't seen as the coolest brand, but they did a lot of work to kind of position the brand as this really cool sports lifestyle company. And they got the marketing and the design and the brand and the business seamlessly correct. And so that's when you first saw Puma really come back to the forefront. When they had collaborations with Alexander McQueen, Hussein Chalayan, I think they had the one with Jill Sander just before that. All these, they were one of the first brands doing a sports brand doing high-end collabs with high-end designers. And that's where I got, you know, I worked with Hussein Chalayan, like a big, you know, kind of high-end.
Cypriot guy.
Yeah, Greek Cypriot, yeah. So, Turkish Cypriot. I'm getting it wrong. Forgive me. And partnering and working with him on his collab with Puma was one of the first big designer collaborations you saw that made sense and worked. And so that was a company that had it, you know, had all the dials just in sync, you know, at one point, you know, and since then I think Adidas have come up.
Yeah.
Nike, and I turned to like a fashion sports company, and
because you were. I'm happy you mentioned that, because you were kind of at the beginning of this whole sort of wave of designer sportswear brands collabs, 100%. Where I'm sure there was a time where it's like, for me anyway, when we were wearing Adidas, unless it was a tracksuit or we were playing football, we weren't really wearing it. Obviously, we wear like the shell toe shoes and whatnot, but it weren't seen as like a
street culture brand.
Yeah, like it wasn't seen as like almost like a fashion statement in that sense. Like I suppose when, for example, speaking of the shell toes, when obviously Run DMC were lit, obviously the shell toes were seen as a fashion statement. But when I was growing up, Adidas didn't have none of those. Yeah. But now, obviously, we've got Yeezys. Yeah. So they've got that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So how does that sort of happen? Like, how are sportswear brands able to become, like, I don't want to call it high fashion,
but they're in that conversation.
How do they get there?
Good strategy. Well, I think a lot of it is, a lot of these brands realized, okay, so hip hop culture, and when I say hip hop culture and all of the culture that kind of derive from that, whether it's grime culture, whether it's other kind of street-based, whether it's skate culture, kind of street-based cultures that have music attached in a big way to the conversation that the community is having. I think a lot of the sports brands, or at least Adidas, realized that, hey, we're in this cultural conversation, right? Because we are working with, and it's part luck, it's part deliberate. We're working with people that are seen as cultural commentators and cultural tastemakers, creators, and we're just going to keep that conversation going, and we're going to start collaborating with them to help them show us what tomorrow looks like. You know, so working with Pharrell, like Adidas do a lot of work with Pharrell.
What they call the human race or something.
Like that. You know, with Kanye with the Yeezy, but they worked with lots of other designers. They worked with, you know, the whole Y3 collaboration. Yeah, who's that? Japanese designer Yoji Yamamoto.
Oh, okay.
And his stuff is like super conceptual, on point. And that's been going. That's one of the original kind of designer collabs that worked. And so they realize they're part of that cultural conversation, and they just continue to support culture in a certain way. Some brand, you know, some of them, sometimes they take more than they give. I think that's a fair criticism in terms of what's the give back to these cultures and whatnot. And just keep nurturing those conversations. You know, you see it with Jordan, the Jordan brand trying to have more conversations with culture. collabing with PSG and, you know, supporting the kids, having a football culture conversation. And I think that's where the sports brands realize we are part of these conversations, so let's ramp it up. Jordan was a big part of that. I think the success of Michael Jordan and Nike and how those shoes transcended basketball. You know what I mean? It was just cool to have those shoes in the Spike Lee films. Or, you know, so I think they realize they're part of the cultural conversation and they just continue it. That's what kids wearing these stuff on the streets. Let's talk. So they leverage it, exactly.
Thank you for watching another episode of Where's My Podcast. If you ever want to take in future episodes on the go, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Whilst you're there, please leave us a 5-star review. It would really help. And also, don't forget to follow us on our Instagram, WMTV_LDN, to keep up to date with the latest goings on in UK fashion. Keep it locked.